Hi, and welcome to another of the Truth series for the Other World podcast. And Fiona and I are very blessed to have Anique Radiant Heart on the show with us today. Anique came to us through Year and one of our previous conversations. So we're both new to your work, which doesn't feel right, considering the fact that you've been here in the community for over 40 years. But it's all timing, divine timing. So it feels perfect that you're joining us now. Anique is a spiritual teacher, a sacred singer, a gatherer of women, and a servant of the goddess. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Denny and Fiona.
And welcome, Fee.
Yes, thank you. Welcome, Anique. I'm very excited to hear what you have to share with us today and open us and also other people up to the work that you do.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Anique, it would be lovely to hear, and for the listeners to hear a little bit more about your 40 years, just where that's taken you and what it is you do in your words.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm so glad that you've booked me in for the whole day, because then I can really tell you about myself. But no, not really. Okay. So I think the most important thing that I want to share about myself is that I'm a deeply committed feminist. And so everything in my world blossoms and stems from those feminist tenets of the equality of women, and also the fact that women have been oppressed, for thousands and thousands of years. So with that as my springboard, many years ago, I'm 74 now, so when I was in my 30s at my first Saturn return, I really started to question the world that I lived in, because I lived in quite a conservative world. And I started to look around me, and I realized there's something desperately wrong here. Why are women so behind the eight ball, so to speak, in so many ways that I don't need to elucidate here? I'm sure we all know it. And I started to really ask the questions. And of course, I should have known even by then, even though it was early on in my journey, if I ask questions, she answers. And so what happened is that a woman moved into, I used to live in a shared house. A woman moved into the house, and she, after talking with me for a while, having, deep and meaningful, and the questions I was asking, she said, "Why don't you read this book?" And she gave me The Women's Room. And I read The Women's Room, and I realized that I had rights. And from there it started. I read every single book I could find on feminism. And one of those books was The Great Cosmic Mother of All, written by Monica Shu, an extraordinary book. So just to sidetrack for a moment, the priestess training that I offer now, I offer 3-year priestess training through my temple. The only book that the women have to read is The Great Cosmic Mother of All by Monica Shu. And of course, I give them another reading list, which I invite them to read. But as long as they read that book, they will be deeply grounded, not only in feminism, but also in goddess. And so my work over the last 40 years now has been teaching women how to reclaim our ancient selves. In other words, it's not enough just to tell women, okay, did you know that 9,000 years ago, every single culture on this planet worshipped the divine feminine? Oh, they say, really? I say, yes. You know why? Because everything that births life is feminine. So of course they did. It was just so simple, really. There doesn't need to be a huge explanation. But it's not enough just to give the explanation. You also have to give all the wonderful food that goes towards feeding that empty, dusty place in our psyches with all that was taken away from us. So teaching women about goddess is about teaching women about who we are. It's fundamental to our existence, I believe, anyway, to our happy existence, our joyful existence, our creative existence. So over the years, I've developed a number of workshops that I've offered over the years. One is called Chanting the Chakras, because I truly and deeply feel that the energetic bodies, our energetic bodies, are ignored in most faiths. the practices involved do not include the energetic bodies. They include the mind, the heart, the spirit, and so on. Whereas in some of the Eastern religions that I investigated, and I investigated virtually every known religion before I started teaching, I found that working with my energy centers, I was able to really adjust the way I feel day to day. And that was just a revelation that I could, if I was feeling a little bit down or lost or whatever, I could work with my heart chakra and my root chakra in conjunction using breathing techniques, and I would feel better. It was just miraculous. And so I really started to work with the chakras. And I found that singing certain ways in certain keys would really affect my body. I started to feel that energetically in my body. And so I wrote original chants to sing, to energize each chakra. And I realized that for women of goddess, to look at an image of a yantra or, each chakra has its own image that represents it. To look at a yantra for me was just, that didn't do it. It didn't take me anywhere. So I thought about it, and I decided to find a goddess that represents each chakra. And so I assigned a goddess to each chakra. So for example, Kali's at the root, Kuan Yin at the heart, and others. I won't take you through every one, others for the others. And then I wrote chants. And so I devised a whole new practice, which combines breath, chant, and I devised very simple movements to work with the chakras. Now that's the workshop that really took me around the world. Women came to my workshops. They were amazed. They told their friends. I was invited to go to conferences, particularly the Glastonbury Goddess Conference. That was a huge springboard for me. And I was invited to give concerts and workshops all around the world. So that started my journeys around the world. And they were also the wind beneath my wings, because if I was in any land whatsoever, I would find the goddess sites, the ancient goddess sites, even if they were a group of magnificent stones in the middle of the forest somewhere in the depths of Germany that nobody's even heard of. There they were, everywhere I went, the goddess sites were. And so I started to take tours, because I realized that when you put your feet, when we are open and our intention is to receive, we put our feet on sacred sites, we receive the most extraordinary transmissions. You can't get them anywhere else. They haven't been preserved anywhere else. They weren't other places, say beautiful land or groves of trees and so on. Yes, they are sacred sites, but they were never actually designated by anyone. They weren't worshipped. There wasn't reverence happening within them. There wasn't procession to them and procession away and all the things that happen at a temple space. And so, of course, the resonance is there, the energy is there, and we receive the most extraordinary transmissions. I mean, if we did have all day, I could talk on and on about it, but I won't. And so I guess the crux of my work is singing, always singing. Sharing my work, particularly my work around using energy, which is very grounded. It's not very frou-frou, like a lot of, I'm not being critical here, just factual, truth. A lot of the stuff that's out there, which is new age, is very frou-frou. And my stuff is very grounded. If you're coming to me and you want a kumbaya experience, you're not going to get that. You're going to get grounded, scientifically sound information, Yet it has the mysticism, and the mysticism comes from experiencing something. And I've had those experiences. And so those portals in me are open. And so information flows through very freely. So now at this age, when I'm starting to slow down, and COVID has shown me that life does go on when we don't travel, which is important for me. I'm starting to focus my attention more on Australia, because as you say, not many people in Australia know me. A lot of women do, but mostly the women that belong to the women only goddess community, not the pagan community, because I don't honor the god at all. For me, the goddess is complete and unto herself, because we as women birth men and women. We, the feminine, births both. So for me, the divine intelligence that births everything has to be feminine. Bearing in mind that the English language is very limiting. There's no other word but female or feminine to describe that. There is no other word. So I hesitate to use those terms. I prefer to use the terms yin and yang. So for me, creation is yin. I work only with women because I want to keep that energy pure. And there is a real reason for that. It's not just that I'm bigoted against men. When men and women are in the same room together, the energy is completely different. I have seen women like you, beautiful women, grounded, wise, informed, connected. I have seen women like you become giggling ninnies if there's just one man in the room. And that's I mean, a trite example, but women don't feel safe about sharing deeply. You know, women don't feel protected, you know, in a room just with women, which is very, with women and men, which is very, very sad. Put women together in just by themselves in a room. By the time it's morning tea time, they've told each other their life stories. You know, there is an element of safety that is not present when men are around, no matter how evolved and beautiful the men are. It's different. I'm not saying it's better or it's worse. It's different. So no wonder that I'm not known very well in Australia. I haven't worked with huge groups like Yuya has, and, you know, Jackie has, and beautiful Jane and so on, because they work within the pagan community, which is mixed in much bigger groups of people. So yes, that in not a nutshell is me.
Well, I think it's interesting because we haven't even dived into your truths yet, and I've already got a million questions to ask you. So, and unless we make this our longest podcast ever, I think it's probably a good time, now that you've given that beautiful introduction to who you are, and thank you for that, to dive into, you know, the question we pose for this podcast really is, what are the 3 most powerful truths that are rising for you at this moment? So let's dive in and see what your first one is.
Thank you. Well, thank you, first of all, for asking me to think about truth, which I've been doing for this since we connected. And what I've come up with, first of all, is that, well, what is truth, really? My truth is different to your truth. Universal truths, well, what are they? You know, they vary according to, you know, whichever discipline or religion or whatever you follow. So really, you know, what is truth? What is something that would resonate in the heart of anyone, really? And I couldn't come up with one truth that would span. And so that in itself is such a valuable realization. So these are my truths. So the first one of my truths I touched upon in our introduction. And my first truth is that sisterhood is innate. I was brought up with the mantra, if you like, through the feminist movement of sisterhood is powerful. And yes, it is. And I don't think I need to explain that at all. But when I say that I feel sisterhood is innate, I feel that there is something within us as women that yearns for connection with other women. It doesn't matter what that connection is, whether it's around the kitchen table cooking together, whether it's sitting down having a cup of tea, whether it's being at a workshop or wherever else. That need to connect with other women is so deeply inculcated within us, purely by virtue of our archetypal memories. Because what patriarchy has done for us is it's taught us from the moment that we are born that we are not worthy. That's what patriarchy teaches us, that we're not worthy, that we're not meant to be powerful and exuberant and brave and go out and, you know, do whatever we want to do. You know what we're taught. We're taught that we are frail and we need to be ladies and cross our legs and, you know, be a mother. And that's it. That's all that's expected of us, really. Thank the goddess, things have changed, but that conditioning goes so very, very deeply. And so for me, the truth of women needing to connect with each other, not even so much wanting, is a truth that needs to get out there. It needs to be understood in its deepest form. And for me, its deepest form, of course, is when women start to relate to each other as primary in their lives. In other words, their loyalties, their sense of themselves as beings of light, everything about them, they can relate with and find with and work with a woman, a sister. And for me, the barriers that have been put up to that have been really subtle. Like, so for example, here's another truth within that truth, you know, that all women want to be mothers. All women don't want to be mothers. Back in the ancient times, and if you read the work of Margaret Mead, women lived together for most of the time while men were off finding food. Women lived together in long houses in New Zealand. In some of the places in New Zealand, they still do. In some places in Asia, they still do. So what I'm talking about here is the matrifocal cultures, the cultures where women understand one thing as a truth, and this is within this truth as well. Only the mother of a child can be known. You can never know the father of the child, really. I mean, at Beltane, when the sacred sites were done, many women would sleep with many men in one night, and babies would come from that, and they wouldn't know who the father was. So it is a truth, I think we can say. Here is maybe a truth, that you always know who your mother is, but you don't always know who your father is. So of course the line comes down through the mother, property comes down through the mother, all these things comes down through the mother. And so that position in society of deep importance and also reverence has been taken away from women. And that's just one example, my sisters. I mean, I'm sincere when I say I could talk all day about this, really. But so for me, when I say sisterhood is innate, for me, it's so critical for the world to come back to a place of some semblance of compassion, kindness, and goodness, is for women to start to come together again, but with a new intention this time, or maybe a more focused intention. Let's come together, for example, in my community. Yes, let's come together and worship the goddess, but let's come together and in a sense, worship each other. We are each other's source of everything. And yet the division that I see between women, the kinds of splits that happen between groups, I mean, it's just horrendous. It's horrendous. It's all around us, all around the world. I see it everywhere. And yet, at the very heart of everything in this world is women coming together as sisters. I truly believe that. So for me, that is the most important truth in my life.
Oh, I can feel your passion for it, and it's beautiful. And I mean, I'm sure it resonates for Fiona as well, as the two of us run women's circles and have been part of women's circles for a long time. And you know, I completely agree that there is something that happens within a circle of women that goes beyond what we can do on our own, and that the pull to be in circle with women is very, very strong. And I can certainly see how in the years that I've sat in circles with women, you have to sit in circles for many years in order to work through all the things, all the wounds that happen amongst women, firstly, and to then get to the depths that women's circles can. There is a lot that needs to be pulled apart and looked through to get to that kind of depth.
Yes.
Yeah. And we're not always dealing with those woundings from this lifetime either. There's many woundings that we're carrying through the feminine from previous incarnations as well, which is a massive, you know, healing process that we've been working through, I believe, very consciously over the last few years as women.
Yes. Yes.
I'd even go so far as to say that we're almost there's something happening in women's circles now that are clearing a lot of the wounds of the sisterhood. And I often feel when I'm with the sisters that I sit mostly in circle with, that we're going through so much, so that the next the next generation of women don't have to go through those same wounds. It feels like this is a part of what we're here to do.
Yes, I totally agree. I totally agree. And I celebrate, I troll Facebook, not because I love Facebook. I do it twice a day, morning and night. But I want to see what the women are doing. I join any group that asks me to join them. And I just see, and what the young women are doing these days is just very hopeful for me. Very, very hopeful. Moving away from what I call the woo-woo, back to more grounded work.
Yeah. And I think that's because we're learning, or we've reconnected with our wisdom keepers now. And we're creating that reconnection where we can just tap into the resource of older women, wisdom keepers like yourself, who have so much to share. And it's like this has opened up, this has become available to us again to actually work in that way. So the more, I think Denny and I both feel the more we can connect women to wisdom keepers, the more healing that can take place, as that sort of lineage, it's not really a lineage, but that information then becomes passed down through that line in a much more conscious way.
Well, the second truth, shall we move on to the second truth?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The second truth is, do we really need forgiveness? So I'm asking a question in order to answer it, to see whether it's true that forgiveness is a good thing, I suppose. So I'm hearing from some of the things that you've said that in your belief system or in your faith system, you do believe that we do reincarnate. And in between incarnations, in my belief system, or in the belief system that I teach through the Temple of the Global Goddess, is that we do rebirth, and in between we go somewhere to rest and wait. And I've called that the void, and I know many people call it the void. And we go and we wait, and I believe we do quite a bit of work there, but I won't go into that in this particular moment. And we make choices. We make choices about every single thing that's going to happen in the life that we choose, that we take. And what I mean by every single thing that happens with us, to us, within us, around us, etc., I mean every single one. So, for example, when you go to the supermarket, when we go to the supermarket, when I go to the supermarket, and the person that is standing behind the counter and taking our money and so on, that is an important connection. It's as an important connection as the one that we're having now, or the one that you have with your very best friend. So when we're in the void, we choose every single thing that will happen to us, with us, around us, within us, etc. So if something which is not pleasant happens to us, just as much as if something pleasant happens to us, this is something we've chosen. When the unpleasant thing that happens, say, comes through a being, another being, a sister betrays us, which happens often, someone hurts us, whatever it is. So the teaching for many faiths, not mine, the teaching is that we must forgive that person or that event or whatever it is, or we're not going to be happy. And so I've seen women go around and around and round and around, but how can I forgive particularly perpetrators of child sexual abuse? How can I forgive my perpetrator? It's can be a very difficult spiral of descent when we get into that whole forgiveness thing, which is so unnecessary. If we truly believe that we have chosen everything, why do we need to forgive someone who has betrayed us? What we need to do is we need to go, oh, okay, all right, I chose this. What's in this? What is in this? Okay, what is the betrayal? Why do I feel betrayed? Where is it in my body? And so on. So we can start a whole process of inquiry instead of spiraling into whatever it is that we spiral into, and then thinking that the only way that we can come back out again is to forgive the person. If we just accept that we have chosen it, there's nothing to forgive. And in fact, we can relate to that person in a completely different way. You know, the last time that it happened to me was about 11 years ago now. And it was such a relief to be able to seek the person out after a little bit of time, to seek the woman out and to say to her, I really want to thank you. I want to thank you. You've really made me think about what happened between us. Do you mind if we talk about it together? Can I share with you some of the things, you know, that I've been feeling? And it was miraculous. It was miraculous. It completely dissolved everything. And so we could then agree to, okay, well, let's close this circle. We did a beautiful ceremony and let's open a new one. And we did another ceremony on a different one moon away. We did the ceremony on the full moon, and then the next full moon, we did the ceremony of beginning a new circle. And she is one of my deepest advisors now. And she's a younger woman than me, which is another beautiful thing as well. So I would like to start to question the truth about forgiveness. Is it really necessary? And how does it enhance our lives? That's the second truth.
I love that reflection on forgiveness, and I think it's thought-provoking, and I'd love to sit with it myself and see where I come to with that, because forgiveness has always been I think a change, not a strange concept. I mean, it's not that I'm against forgiving people, but I've just, that whole thing that you know, the way that you worded it around, you can't be truly happy until you forgive, has always felt a little off to me in terms of what that actually means, because I think there's lots of ways that we can, you know, we can work through things without having to sink into that as it being the one way to move forward. So your concept around forgiveness is, I think, for me personally, very thought-provoking, and I'd love to sit with that and see where I get to with it. I'm sure it will pop up in one of our future podcasts when Denny and I discuss it again. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, that's a pleasure.
Yeah, from my perspective, when I think about it, I'm coming at it from a different angle of, I often say that sorry feels like a wasted word to me. I don't get when people say sorry to me. It's just like, it rolls off me like it's just never felt like it had anything for me, someone saying sorry, because I just think that that's for them. You know, whatever that journey is something that they need to step into. And I think that might be the other end of the coin of what you're saying, that, because yeah, that there, I can feel that with that forgiveness, there is this, it starts something going in yourself. So what's that journey? I'm very much with you on that those places of sorry and you're forgiven are personal. That they're not so much about the other person. It's more about discovering what is this, what's here for me, which is how I see so many things as what's here for me. So yeah, I agree. Thanks for that. It's a beautiful truth. Or questioning of the truth.
Yes, indeed. Yes. And I suppose the third one is the power of singing, the healing power of singing, and the healing power of shared singing. I don't need to talk about the healing power of sound. People know now how powerful sound is, how powerful singing is, you know, how we oxygenate our bodies when we sing, how different centers in our brains light up when we sing. All that is just out there for anybody to find out. But for me, what I've found wonderful about singing is that sacred singing can dissolve resistance in people. Now, I used to think that it was just something in my voice. Now, I'm talking now about sacred singing. I'm sorry, I should have said the power of sacred singing. I know that, for example, when I started to do workshops, I had a very Pollyanna kind of naive attitude that everybody who came to the workshops must obviously be just waiting to hear the pearls of wisdom that would roll off my lips, Well, it was a bit of a surprise to find after the first, second, third, even fourth, workshops, that there was always one or two people, women mostly, in the group that would pipe up and say something that was a bit disturbing or took me off center, or would have a long-winded explanation about why they didn't agree with something in particular that I just said. Or I'm sure you've experienced it. And so I heard a whisper in my heart from Goddess, and she said, next time before you begin the workshop, sing. So I thought, oh, okay. So the next time I had the workshop, I sang, she changes everything she touches. And immediately I felt a difference in the room. Immediately. I felt it, and I could almost hear it, like a pin drop. That resistance in the room just dissolved. Just through that act of sacred singing, in other words, putting the voice out in a form which is reverence, in a form which is worship. Because there's a big difference. If you listen to me sing my jazz and then listen to me sing my sacred singing, you will hear there's definitely a very different quality to the voice. So there's something in sacred singing that dissolves resistance to the divine. So what happens is that the voice enters the heart chakra when it's a sacred singing, when the intention, of course, we know intention is everything. So when the intention is to offer a piece of sacred singing, the heart chakra opens to receive that, because it's worship. Anything that's worshipped is received into our being, our sacred energetic being, through the heart center. That's why the heart chakra is so important. It receives everything and then disperses it, if you like, where it's meant to go, through our energy center. The sacred voice, the sacred singing voice, opens the heart so that information can be taken in and processed in a way that's beneficial. The heart will not receive within a sacred context anything that is not resonant. Aha, here we go with truth, with a universal sacred truth. And so singing at the beginning of a workshop means that anybody who's sitting there wanting to resist because of their own need to connect, these resistances, I understand deeply, come from a need to connect. They come from a need to be seen. They come from a need to be loved, whatever it is. And so when we sing and we release that resistance and allow these people to be loved, they are put back into alignment, and they can sit within the workshop and truly receive and enjoy. So for me, one of the most important truths of my world is sacred singing and sacred practice, because sacred singing is just as important for us to hear and experience as it is for anyone else. And so sacred practice is when our small self, our smallest self, sings to our higher self, where we in fact worship ourselves, which is what we're told in the world not to do. Don't be prideful. Don't think that you are good and wonderful and beautiful and excellent. No, we're told the opposite. But when we sing through sacred practice without doing anything at all, we are singing to our higher selves and worshiping ourselves. We're worshiping the divine, because that's what we are. And we forget it. And so in those moments of presence, when we're singing our sacred singing, we are truly connecting with who we are. And how can that not be beneficial? How can that sacred singing not be beneficial for the world and for every individual being in the world? And that's why I create music. The last 3 of my 7 CDs are all sacred chants, short ones, longer ones. They say, and I truly believe this, they say that at least 20 to 25 to 30 minutes of chanting will move you out of left brain into right brain. And I've experienced that. And so to be fully present, we have to be engaged in our right brain as well as our left brain. And most of the time we're not. We're only engaged with our left brain, lineal thinking. So sacred singing is another universal truth for me.
Well, it's an interesting one for us, as Fee and I are both self-confessed non-singers.
Well, I feel that I could probably help shift that for you.
That would be amazing.
We could all sing.
But
No,
I
really, there are sisters who come into my Chanting the Chakras workshop, especially because that's where we as therapists say, we unplug or we unwrap or something, singing. You know, we demystify singing. We all sing. Trust me, you all sing.
I love it. I'm sort of like, while you're speaking, I'm trying to reframe that to, okay, singing's for you, but art's for me. Like I do that, exactly that, but I paint instead of sing, because I'm trying to find every way possible that's surely not my way. But I do hear you. I mean, I do know that when I'm in the presence of someone that has the ability to use their voice in that way, that it changes the whole environment of a room or a place.
Well, you will have witnessed Jane do that.
Yes.
She is a master at that. Yes.
Absolutely. There were moments we traveled, both Fee and I, to the Flinders Ranges, and Jane did a lot of singing and chanting, and it just transported us somewhere else for sure, and opened. It's such an opening
Yes.
when you can hear someone that has that ability.
Yeah. And I also share Denny's resistance sometimes to this, concept of singing. I actually love to sing. I love to sing when I know no one at all can hear me. and I just, when I'm in a group of people and they're all singing, I just have this huge fear of singing loudly in case I just sound so awful, because I have this huge thing that when I sing, my voice is just so terrible. But I love the process and what it does to my body when I do sing. I totally get that. I totally understand that. And at some point, I'm sure, if I don't know, at some point I will work through that or not. I don't know yet, but I understand totally that there's, and when you said sacred singing, I thought, oh yes, that's what it is. It's sacred singing. It's when the resonance moves through your body in such a way that it shifts your energy. I can totally understand that. Absolutely.
You're both located in Queensland, aren't you?
No, in Sydney. Northern
Oh,
Beaches.
Sydney. Oh, okay. My old stamping ground. I used to live at Colorado Plateau.
Okay, just up the road.
Just up the road.
Beautiful spot. Whereabouts are you now, Anique? You're in...
I'm in Maitland, which is in the Hunter Valley. Goddess's own earth. Honestly, it's beautiful here. Yes.
Beautiful. Well, there was things that you brought up in your introduction, and I know that Fiona said she had a few questions about that, and there felt like there was some real controversial topics that I love. I love it when we get controversial and get out of the safe zone. And there were definitely some things that I'm listening to, and I can feel this, oh, okay, I want to know more, or I want to open a conversation around that. There was this, and there's a bit of resistance in me too, because, I come from a place of wanting, of understanding how out of balance we've been in the patriarchal world. But I have an understanding that bringing things back into balance is going to take both yin and yang, masculine and feminine. So the big swing to the goddess, I could definitely feel the resistance in myself to that. I'd love to just kind of maybe ask you, Fee, where your questioning was, or whether you felt that too.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I felt that there was a huge question there, and my feeling is that that's a podcast in itself. That's a huge conversation that I would love to dive into and explore a little bit more deeply, because I feel very much in the same way as Denny does, that it takes both. But I feel, what I think one of the most important things that I've learned from talking to you today is how committed you are to that path that you're on. And I love that commitment. And so I feel like there's so much to learn from that. So I would love to explore that more deeply in a conversation maybe focused on that, around that.
I think it's really important. Well, I feel and know it is deeply important, because in many ways, from my bird's eye view, we've been trundling that paddle for years. Yes, at least 40 years. I mean, I came into this world 40 years ago, and I've been watching women trying to work with men for 40 years and trying to bring men along for 40 years. It hasn't worked. So why not try something different? That's my point of view. For me, we can lose nothing. We can lose nothing, really. If we look into our own hearts, really look into our own hearts and see how much we have tried to teach our brothers, our fathers, our uncles, our sons, and so on. And it hasn't worked, my sisters. And all I'm positing is that there are other ways. There are women who will want, to work with men as well. And that's beautiful. And there are women like me who will want to work just with women. And that's beautiful. And somewhere along the line, what I'm hoping is that we may be walking along together in parallel lines. And then eventually that gap will get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. But that's not going to happen until men work alone as well. Until men work alone for a long time to really touch those tender places. Like, can they really look at the fact that they are killers? Can they really look at the fact that they are wife beaters? Can they really look at the fact that they are rapists? These are provocative questions, my sisters, and it needs more than just an hour. It needs a day, a week, at least of us getting together. But what I am asking women who like you have questions about it and maybe doubts about it as well, which is only natural, is to just maybe think about it. Just think about it. And maybe get together with women like me, not just me. There are many others. I can give you a whole list of women who work just with women all around the world and in Australia. And then maybe we can have a moment when we can sit down and really try, to nut it out. Because it's not a war. It's not a war. For me, it is a huge healing of an enormous wrong. And that wrong is the oppression of women for thousands of years. That cannot be denied. That is one truth that cannot be denied. So let's really look at that. When you first asked me to talk about, or when I said that I would like to talk about, I was going to talk about that as a fundamental truth. But then I thought, no, I can't. It's not enough time. It's just not enough time.
Yeah, but it's there.
Yes.
It's right there. And there's so many bits about this that are interesting, because there's also the male and female, or men and women, and then there's masculine and feminine, and the reframing of those two places, which I'd love to go into with you more too.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I hear so many women saying, I'd love to do it, but we never actually do it. Let's do it. Just
absolutely. Well,
in a Zoom,
that'll be our next one. But because it's a really important question. I mean, yes. We work with women, and I do feel called to work with women. Women will go, that's just where I enjoy working, and I know lots of men that do work in groups of men, and I'm with you in that there's lots of places that we can go in a group of women. That changes when there's men, not for the worse or the better, it just changes. And then there's other subjects here that I can feel need to be discussed further.
Yes. There used to be years and years ago, we used to get together for weekends, and we would do just that. We would somebody would take responsibility to just keep the structure together so that we didn't go all over the place, because we did want to come together to talk about important issues like this. Let's do it. And we used to spend the whole weekend from morning till night. We'd start really late, but we'd get up in the morning and we're so keen to start again. It not only is it energizing, it's really healing, and it's needed. Now it's really needed. We don't have a lot of time to waste now, sisters. It's time to look at the hard stuff.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, for today, thank you so much, Anique, for coming in and sharing your 3 most powerful truths at the moment. They are awesome, and I'm looking forward to sitting with them after the podcast and seeing what arises for me, because the key thing I think from these conversations is giving people food for thought, something to think about and to take it inside and work through. What does that mean for you? How does that land with you? And, you know, what does it inspire within you as well? So I think you've done that in a really beautiful and powerful way today. So thank you for sharing them with us.
And if I can add, I think just seeing someone standing so strongly in their own truths opens the doors for others to do the same, because I think there's a lot of fear over the subject of truth right now in the world. So I agree. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to our second conversation.
Well, it's been my pleasure, sisters. I'm so glad to know you're out there doing your thing. I love you. I love you. You're beautiful. Thank you for everything you're doing in the world for us all.
Beautiful.
Thanks, Anique.